Hello, I'm Dr. Jeremy St. John, and today I'm going to talk to you about the difference between relative and absolute references. This is a fundamental Excel concept. You just really need to know this. So for my demonstration, I'm going to let's have two labels. We'll call them things and formulas. And that's because I'm usually using my relative or absolute references from formulas. So I'm going to shade these, center them, and under things I'm going to have 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Of course, these things can be numbers, other formulas, they can be all kinds of things. Under formulas, I'm going to have in cell B2, I'm going to enter my first formula, and recall all formulas begin with an equal sign, so I type in equal sign. And this is going to be a basic formula. In B2, I'm going to reference A2. So equals A2. I'll just click on there, or I can enter A2. Notice up in the formula bar, you can see the underlying formula. Well, when I hit the enter key, of course, it's going to display 1 because that's what's in A2. Now, if I go to the lower right-hand corner, you'll notice that the cursor changes from a white cross to a black cross. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a little black square, and this is called the fill handle. I can click on it, hold it down, and drag it. So I'm on a notebook, so it's a little difficult, but I can drag it down as far as I want, 500 rows, 1,000 rows, and then release it. And what it's doing is it's copying that formula down. And this formula equals A2, that's a relative address. It's pointing over to A2. Default is relative. So when you reference any other cell or range or any references are by default relative. So as I copy it down, it points to the same position relative to where I copy that formula. If I copy it across, it'll be the same way. It's just that instead of incrementing the rows, it would increment the columns. So wherever I copy this formula to, it's going to stay pointing to the same position relative to wherever I copy it to. So that's a relative address, no problem. The thing is, sometimes I don't want it to move on me. Here in B2, I'm going to change A2 from a relative address to an absolute reference. And the way I do it is I just put a $sign before the A to make it fixed, to make it an absolute reference, and a $sign before the 2 to make it fixed or an absolute reference. And I can have mixed where I only have a $sign before the A or only a $sign before the 2. In other words, only a $sign before the column or only a $sign before the row. So I just put in a $sign, put in a $sign. So now I've got an absolute reference to A2. I'm going to hit enter and it's still 1. But as I copy this down, note that it always points to A2. So here, A2, A2, A2. See the formula bar? It doesn't change. Whereas, and let me show you a great shortcut key, and that's F4. I can toggle between them. Do you see there's only the column is as absolute. Now it's a relative address, and I can keep hitting A4. That's what I'm doing. I can toggle between the 4. So here's a relative. Okay, let me show you some important things. Right now I have B2 selected. You can see that B and the 2 are selected. Up here in the formula bar, you see equals $sign A, $sign 2. So that's okay. Let me show you some important things here. You can see I have cell B2 selected. You can see the B and the 2, and up in the formula bar, you see that within B2 I have a formula, and that formula is equal $sign A, $sign 2. It's an absolute reference to cell A2. Well, I can go up in the formula bar and I can delete the $signs, hit the enter key, and make it, let me click back on B2. You can see that now it's a relative address. I can copy that down and you can see it's back to a relative address. A2, let's see, watch a formula bar. A3, A4, A5, A6. It's relative. So it points over to A2, and as I copy it down, it points to A3, A4, A5, and A6. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out, is that you can modify these formulas up in the formula bar. And sometimes that's very useful if you have a very long formula and it just can't even display in that cell. So let's see. Another thing I want to point out is I usually don't use shortcut keys, but this one is great. It's F4. If you hit F4, first highlight the cell reference, in this case A2, or the range reference. Just highlight it and then hit F4, and you'll see it changes to an absolute reference. If I hit F4 again, now only the row is fixed. Hit F4, now only the column is fixed. So it will toggle between the four. Right now I'm just hitting F4 so I can make it relative. Quick F4 will make it an absolute reference. And that's kind of nice, because otherwise you have to get your cursor in there and you type the dollar signs, and it's easy to make a mistake. So that's the lesson on the difference between relative versus absolute references.